I just want to remind you that Super Dentist Boost is happening in Philadelphia. It is August 4th and 5th. There's still a few spots left to come in person. We have over 29 people signed up. It's intentionally like a 40-person event. You can text Boost to 215-543-6454. We're also live streaming this to Earth. So if you're currently on Earth and watching this, you can also watch Super Dentist Business Boost for free from your couch, drinking coffee from the treadmill. Just text stream to 215-543-6454. Signing up for that for free ends on July 4th. So please sign up now if you'd like it for free, or if you want to pay later, that is also totally cool. So we just talked to Dr. Darcy, one of my favorite people, a role model for a newest practice owner, someone who shares with authenticity, figuring out how to survive, thrive, and not cry, the benefits of coaching. And now I'm going to bring up the awesome Dr. Laura Brenner, a recovering dentist, also one of my favorite people. Laura, you're welcome to start your video, or my team can bring Laura up when you're ready. Laura is a coach and does so many amazing things for us in the dental space. Do I need to do something for Laura? Let's see. Ask to start video. I saw you before, Laura. Perfect. Oh, there she is. So Laura, you're muted still, but as we talk about Laura, I so appreciate having Laura here. She's been to Super Dentist Boost and Nacho events. She does so many things to deal with some of the uncomfortable conversations we have about dentistry. I just said, we got to stop saying if you're not a practice owner, you're not successful, whether we say that overtly or whether we say that in our messaging. And Laura, just catch us up for your story. Pretend this is the first time someone is seeing Laura Brenner on Nacho TV. You could start where you are, where you're sitting, what you do each day, and a little of your recovering dentist story.
Okay, yes. Thanks, Paul, for having me. You also are one of my favorite people, so it's like peanut butter and jelly, right?
I like that. Thanks.
It's a good fit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a coach. I help dental professionals create their lives and their careers on their terms.
Yeah.
And so I loved this conversation that you were having with Darcy. There, you know how many times I was wanting to jump in, but I was muted.
Tell us what I love this. I mean, this is the point of doing all these things. What did Dr. Darcy say that either resonated? You, we should say more of that. I didn't think of it that way. What were some of the things you would have wanted to jump in on and add if you
much. I mean, the investing in yourself, your discussion about like how having a coach can help so much. It's one of those things I always say, it's like getting a hip replacement. You know, you've had those patients that come see you every 6 months and they're like, I need a hip replacement. I need a hip replacement. And then they do it and you're like, how was it? And they're like, it was the best thing ever. I should have done it sooner.
Yes. And I want to share actually, because you and I stand in there against arrows and stale nachos. And there was one recently on dental nachos that I was championing this story, Laura. One of my residents, who I'm so proud of, bought a practice that was doing $700,000, okay? Over the past decade, she has transformed it to collecting 1.8 million. She has an amazing associate. Through this time, and I know this is something that's a point of view, she went through a cancer diagnosis and had to stop working for a year. If she didn't listen, I think I wanted to say, I hope I was part of it, getting the right disability insurance, she would have financial disaster. So I said, hey, everybody, I talked to this person, you know, she's transformed her practice. She's added associate. She created a place for this, and she credits coaching for this. The coach she's used is not a sponsor of Dental Nachos. I didn't mention a coach, and I just thought this was overly positive. People were saying, Paul, you're only saying this because you want people to sign up with coaching. Coaching's a scam. You're doing this to promote your coaches. Nobody needs a coach. Why do you think? Is it the mental health therapy for dentists of 2023? Now people say, I'm going to a therapist. Say, great, you're physically fit. You got to be mentally fit. We have dropped a lot of resistance to people. In the 1980s, if people said, but dentist said, I'm going to go to a therapist, they would have to hide it and not say it. Tell us what you're a coach and you see this out there. What is this pervasive dentist negativity about coaching?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it's these dentists' fault. It's probably based on an experience they've had, or just not knowing, right? And probably, you know, you could hire a coach and it not go well, but does that mean all coaches are bad? No. And what's interesting, here's the thing I think is so funny, Paul, is as dentists, we are selling care. We're selling health. We're selling treatment, right? In fact, I say that we're so good at sales that we don't even know we're selling,
Yeah.
right? But what I find so ironic and interesting is that as dentists, we feel hurt when our patients accuse us of just trying to sell stuff and not caring about them and not truly wanting to help them. That hurts us. And so I find it so interesting that we can't see the commonality that most coaches, just like in every career, you've got the good ones, you've got the great ones, you've got the not so good ones, right? We're the same as coaches. Like when you say that we are just out there to sell, we feel the same way that you feel when your dentists say that about you. Because
And I love this.
really
And also, Lori, we have to also say this. I say this all the time. It's not my personal trainer's fault if I eat pizza at 11 p.m. It's not, right? And we have patients saying my crowns always break, and it's a patient who literally eats Jolly Ranchers all the time. So the bad or good coaching thing, I actually see most coaches as being great in my experience, or good. I've seen some follow-through problems, but you know what's even sadder to me, and I really stood in and battled in an authentic way. Many of the people saying this about coaching, Laura, I said, "Oh, cool. Could you tell me like which coaching experience you had that wasn't good?" And they go, "I've never hired a coach. I don't need a coach. I just listen to free podcasts." And I just really bothers me, Laura, because cool, if you don't want to hire a coach, don't shame others who are trying to do better. And that's where I really stop and say, if you don't need a personal trainer, don't shame someone else who uses personal training. If you don't need a mental health therapist, don't shame others, because that really bothers me. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think when more stories like Darcy of this will get now tell us, Laura, I want to hear, and I won't interrupt. You became a dentist and it wasn't all you thought it was cracked up to be. And you broke up with dentistry. Give us a few minutes on that.
Yep. And I love what you just said, because that's a great point. But yeah, so I practiced for 10 years. In year 3, I decided that I really hated the work. I didn't enjoy it. And I invested so much into getting into this career that I didn't see a way out. And so it took me 7 years to figure out how to choose myself first. And guess what? I got therapy. I worked with a career coach. I did a lot of personal development. And that was what helped me see that look, dentistry is like the hardest thing in the world. Yes, there are some jobs that might be harder in some ways, but dentistry is hard. You put all the things together in one package. It is hard. And if we can do this, most people in the world can't do what we can do. So it was like putting all the coaching and the therapy and the personal development together and realizing one day, like, hey, this is hard. If I can do this, I can do anything.
Right.
So it was a process of really like investing in myself and figuring out.
What was the parts of the work? I want to tell you a story about someone who's breaking up with dentistry even sooner than you after this. But what did you not like about the work? I mean, because you did the models, Laura, you did the dental school patients. How did you just be surprised that the work you didn't like?
Oh, yes, I love that too, because people always, because I've got a blog and, you get the people online who are like, and they're usually patients, because I wrote 10 reasons your dentist probably hates you too. That blog post, and patients some patients love it. And then you get the ones that hate it, right? And they'll be like, why'd you choose dentistry if you hate it so much? And the truth is, and you say this all the time, this is the one career you can't know until you get into it. You have to marry dentistry. And you and Darcy were talking about a dental practice. I always think, oh my gosh, buying a dental practice is like having the baby with your spouse to try to make your marriage better.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, it was very much the patient doctor relationship was really painful for me. And I really, really love to connect with people. And I do think that dentistry allows a lot of people to have that connection with others, but we all see the world differently. And the way I see how I like to connect with people, I viewed dentistry as like, I felt like the patients didn't understand me. They didn't understand how hard I was trying to make their lives better, and that I was sort of the enemy. And that was my problem. That perception was, I
But you know
take
what's interesting,
responsibility
Laura,
for
is,
that, but that's how I saw it.
I was a restaurant server, so I really got that thick skin, but I was bringing stuff to people that they wanted at restaurants, nachos and margaritas. And I have to say, the story I want to tell you, and I got to connect you with this guy. Whenever someone sees me write, I'm just like, I love paper. I make little notes, and I got to say, connect Laura to this person. So
Me
this
too,
is a true
Paul.
story. Yeah, this is a true story. Someone reached out to me and said, Paul, I watched your associate videos. I love what you do. 2021 grad, went to one of the best dental student schools in the country. His fiance is a dentist, and he is leaving dentistry after 2 years. She's going to stay with it. He's going to try to move into some sort of transitions world. And I said to him, like, and he's collecting $900,000 this year. So he's making over $300,000. And I said, why are you leaving? Right? Like, you're making good money. It's so early in your career. I wasn't chastising him or criticizing him. I was leading with curiosity, like Ted Lasso. It's fair to lead with curiosity. And he said, Paul, it's just not for me. I want to make people happy. And I just can't take that I'm constantly, people are annoyed with me. They don't want to be here. And I just think that is why dentistry is so difficult / impossible to taste test. I grew up in a dental practice, Laura. And if I didn't learn dental implants, I think I also might have left dentistry early. I really loved implants, but I did not enjoy the full contact arts and crafts dentisting world. And that's what you're sharing. It wasn't, like I said, Darcy, it wasn't totally like, I can't get this crown prep right. It's like, it's the crown prep and the patient upset and the money part and the team part. And as an associate, I mean, I think what you can share is, as an associate, you had some not so great jobs, right?
Correct.
What were some not so, if someone's just watching and saying, these were some not so great jobs, this is what symptoms of a not so great job. So if you have a job like this, what are some of your symptoms of your not so great associate jobs?
So symptoms, like how I would feel, or
how you'd feel, or how they treated you, or
how they treated me. Yeah. Well, I think this is a really common. Oh, sorry, Paul. What'd you say?
I said any and all of the above stuff that was happening in the office. I mean, there's times where dentists throw instruments, and if you don't know that that's not right, you'd be like, your dentist should not throw instruments. So give us any symptoms of a not so.
Yeah. And I think this is a really common dynamic. And one of the things I wish we could do as a collective community is help bridge that gap between what it's like to be the owner and what it's like to be the associate. Because there are certain dynamics, and both sides are right and both sides are wrong, if we want to look at it that way. Right. And so, one of the things that I think is really hard as an associate is you're expected to be a leader in the practice, but you're given no leadership freedom.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of times associates, and I see this with hygienists too, like, we begin to feel like victims because we have no control over the world around us. Someone's creating your schedule, someone's creating the rules. If something's not going right, you might get this really great idea and go to your boss and say, hey, this isn't really working that well. Why don't we try this? And so many times the answer that I got in those situations was, oh yeah, we've tried that. It doesn't really work. And so you just get dismissed. And when you do that over and over, after a while, you start to go, you know what? Like, this isn't working well. I don't like what's happening in my schedule, but you know what? I'm just not going to say anything because it won't help to say anything. So I'm just going to suck it up and just pretend it doesn't matter. And it's really a form of self-protection.
Oh, I see that. And your points, there's so many good points about this. I'll share, since I still do currently go to my dental office 1 day a week. I am the leader of Dentist Job Connect and the leader of Dental Nachos. And one of the biggest challenges with practice ownership, and it in the E-Myth Revisited, dentists are doing, the owner dentist is doing work too. So they're often not able to lead because they are making the proverbial dentist donuts. And it's a real problem. In most companies where there is a CEO that's leading, they would be much more receptive to their number two, Laura, the associate, coming and saying, hey, we should use this new lab. I found out about it, but they don't often have the bandwidth to process that. And it's a really big weakness and vulnerability inside of dentistry. The CEO being the lead producer of the stuff creates so many challenges to that environment. And then people kind of give up and resign themselves to this is how it is. So, you leave dentistry. Let's take this. You're going to be at Boost, Laura, and tell us, what's your theme going to be? What do you want to talk about at this Super Dentist Boost? What do you want to get across to the dentisting world?
Yes. Well, someone yesterday, I was on a call and he referred to me as the queen of burnout. So
I
the
like that.
topic is going to definitely include burnout. And I was not offended by that title because, a lot of us experience it and we need to talk about it. This is really about being real with yourself and how can you diagnose your burnout? Because one of the things I've learned in my experiences in the last 5 years is that there are different types of burnout. There's burnout when you love your career. There's burnout when you hate your career. There's burnout when you're overworked. There's all these different reasons. So if we can diagnose your career, then we can find the right treatment plan. That's like the biggest, you talk about
I
this
love
all the
it.
time. You just talked about treatment plans, right? It's
You need to do it like I was saying to you. When we say to a patient, I say, you have a form of bone shrinkage, a little bit, a medium amount, or a lot. Because me, I go, hey, you got bone shrinkage. Like, I do. I go, but you have a little bit. Let's try to prevent it from becoming a medium bit. Then some people go, isn't my bone great? I go, unfortunately, I have to share with you, I say this, that you have a bit of bone shrinkage known as periodontal, because what I share, and burnout happens inside and outside of dentistry. And maybe also, Laura, this is just my thoughts. What's the difference between burnout and career dissatisfaction, right? Are they the same thing? Are they different things? If a mom's burnout, it probably doesn't mean she's dissatisfied with being a mom, but maybe some are. But what I share with people is, and I want to get this next, is just because you're burnt out, you can't immediately quit your job, right? I mean,
right.
because you like eating food and living in a home, and dentists come to me and say, I'm burnt out being a dentist, I want to quit. I go, cool. What are you going to do otherwise? They go, nothing. I got no skills. I go, well, why don't you figure out a way to do this? So tell us a little more about why you're called the queen of burnout and your daily coaching life related to it.
Because I experienced burnout in practice, and at the time I didn't, 2004, no one was talking about burnout. I didn't know it was burnout until I looked back in 2020. I had to give a talk on burnout and I was like, oh, that was what was happening, right? Imagine someone who's burnt out and doesn't even know it. If you don't know it,
Right.
maybe leaving for me was the wrong thing. Now, in my case, it was the right thing. But yeah, it's because I help people who are burnt out. And I believe, to your conversation with Darcy about, there's like the old way of success in dentistry is to be a private practice owner, right? Let's change that and say that there's a new way. You can be successful in dentistry in a way that works for you. You get to decide. And so with burnout treatments, what I do is I help people overcome their burnout by finding out what's the right treatment for them. And if you can diagnose it properly, just like in dentistry, you can find the right treatment plan. Because somebody who is burnt out and, for example, hates their career, the treatment plan for people who are burnt out, I burn myself out all the time now. This is how I learned it, is I burn myself out and I love what I do. The treatment plans, the treatments for loving what you do, burnout, work for me.
Right.
But they didn't work for me when I was burnt out and hated my career. So we have to find that, we have to be honest with ourselves, and I help people guide them through that so they can understand, so they can create their own success in
And I
dentistry.
also think you do this thing, which is really just amazing. You make people feel normal for feeling not normal, because we have such a big problem in dentistry. You guys can take that out. Laura Brenner, I make people feel normal for feeling not normal. It's a great phrase.
Yes.
Use it, because I really dislike this theme, and it's not everybody, that if you don't like dentistry, it's your problem. If you don't like dentistry, you chose the wrong thing. Why don't you like dentistry? You make a lot of money, because it's just so unbelievably unfair to that unique story of that person. And I think, if someone came to you who was dating someone and you were dating someone and you loved the person you were dating and they were having problems, I don't think it helps you say, but I love the person I'm dating. Maybe don't say that part. Maybe approach it with curiosity, but also let's just say someone said something as simple as, I'm really annoyed that I got a boyfriend and he likes to play golf on Sunday. You might be like, hey, you might have to reframe how you think about that. But I'm really annoyed my boyfriend plays golf every day and never spends time with me. Well, that's a bigger problem. So many of these dentists don't even take the time to take a time and approach it with curiosity and say things like, tell me more about it. And that's what you do in these magical ways. And you've created this, what is your coaching platform look like to people? Someone's like, hey, I want to reach out to Laura and talk about burnout, talk about what's happening. How does that work with you?
Yeah. So one of the main things I do is help people start side gigs.
Yeah.
Because whether you are burnt out in dentistry and maybe bored and you like it, but I think it's the best way. Like doing the same thing for 20, 30
Yes.
years over and over is going to get old and boring. You're going to want to grow and change. So starting a side gig to me is, no matter what, the best way to
What are some
overcome.
examples of side gigs? Someone's like, hey, like on a menu, what are some ones that you have helped people do, whether it's being an author, starting a podcast, coaching,
Yeah.
transition?
Well,
What are some examples?
I love that question too, because, well, I won't go into my tangent on that. I'll just answer your question directly. One of my clients, Jenna, she's doing the coolest thing. So she is an artist. She loves painting. And she thought at the beginning, like, how can I make money? Like you said earlier, like we have to make money, and a
Right.
lot of things don't make as much as dentistry, but we also have these beliefs that, like, oh, well, I want to paint, but how can I make money painting? And I said to her, well, someone makes money painting.
Right.
Why can't it be you? So let's figure it out. So what we did was we looked at those painting and sipping places
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you
yeah.
can go drink wine and paint. And she was like, that sounds like that would be fun. So we really broke that down into, how do we get from, A to Z, doable steps. And she then, went to local pubs. She lives in Wales. So she went to local pubs, and a couple said that she could host this event for free so she could try it out with investing $100,000 in a build out, right? And then she eventually got to where she was having so much fun hosting these workshops that we were like, why don't you turn them, why don't you turn them into team building workshops for dentists? So dental teams are now hiring her
That's
to
awesome.
teach them to paint. And she's also incorporated some CE components into it. And they're talking about leadership, communication, perfectionism through this painting workshop. So how cool is that? And so what I always say is, it could be anything. There's that NFL referee. He was not my client.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was a dentist.
And
I found
I love that,
there's,
Laura. I mean, we have transitions brokers, coaches, speakers, authors. That painting story is great. And one of the things is, people say dentistry is a great career. Yes, and right. I'm not an improv guy, but yes. And the last year of your career doesn't look much different than the first. Yes, and there's not a lot of creativity built into dentistry. Yes, and all the people on the Zoom watching from Dental Nachos, Laura, and Dentist Job Connect, they went to Dental Nachos University as kids, and they're like, what I want to do is work for a guy who named himself after an appetizer. No, I made this company up, and now I have these people from all different parts of life working with me. I hope they work with me for as long as fits for them, but there's creativity outside of dentistry that is really inspiring to people, and it's nothing to do with finances. I mean, and I think you're bringing this out for people in an awesome way. So these side gig thing, Laura, let's just say people want to do, the painting one is really great, but let's just say they want to be a practice broker, sell practices, because Laurel Gans, and I helped her get that job, and she's awesome. So she left dentistry, became a transitions broker. Do you have to realize that you're likely going to make less money doing your side gig than dentistry? Even if it's simple questions, would you say, hey, that's important for someone to realize?
well, and yes, and
Yeah.
it also goes back to what Darcy was saying, is like, how much is it worth for you to buy your happiness?
Right.
Right? Like I used to say, you cannot pay me enough money to live this way. So if you can get to a point where you can recognize that, yeah, you may take a pay cut, but you can always build it back up.
Yeah.
Right? Like we didn't start out in dentistry making these multiple six figures a year. Some of us still are making not multiples, right? We started as students in a lot of debt. We had to get here. So somehow we think we don't want to go back, but sometimes that's the fun journey. So yeah, a lot of times you do, but there are other ways too, that if you're willing to, you can also make income from these other sources as well.
And that's why I think you would like Gary Vee a lot, because people do this all the time in their real lives outside of dentistry. they're a second grade teacher, but they really want to sell stuff on Etsy. And Gary Vee says, well, I know you don't love being a second grade teacher in this moment, but you probably do love eating food and living in a home. So while you transition from your second grade teacher to your side gig, do it outside of those hours, right? I think also sometimes just changing something doesn't always make you happier either. So you do it with this responsible way where you have this track record of being able to guide people through this. And I think what you said is, how much does it cost to buy your happiness, is so true. And I just think people like you, tell us a little bit, I won't keep you too much more longer, Laura, but where's the shame in quitting dentistry? Like, why, even if sometimes not even quitting, Laura, just going from full-time to part-time. I'm sure you hear it on your calls. Where does that come from?
Yeah, that shame, I think it comes from our expectations of thinking that dentistry is supposed to be a marriage for us. And, I think even when people get divorced in their personal lives, they go through a feeling of shame, right? They don't want to feel like failures, and we are high achievers, so we don't want to feel like failures. So let's redefine the way a career should look. Instead of dentistry being the final destination, I imagine like being in Europe and having a Eurail pass. Remember those?
Yeah.
Right. And like you go you get to these train stations and dentistry is the final destination. Why can't dentistry just be a stop along the way?
For as long as it makes sense for you.
What's that?
For as long as it makes sense. And it's just like,
totally.
You say, for as long as this makes sense. I live in the city. Some people move to the suburbs. For as long as it made sense, they lived in the city. And like we get what I want to bring out, Laura, and I love the Euro example, is I don't know why other dentists who love dentistry for some reason feel threatened that other people want to stop doing dentistry. Like if I'm at Alves with you eating my favorite nachos and you're one of my BFFs and you go, I don't like those nachos. I go, okay, just more for me, right? I don't freaking get angry and be like, how dare you give up on these nachos? So I believe that dental school does this because I think it's an insecurity in the people who love dentistry. Truly secure people should have zero care if somebody wants to stop doing a career. They might want to offer help like I do. I mean, I might say, hey, tell me more about it. Maybe it's just the job that you're in. If it is your first job and you're working in a Medicaid place and nobody's there, before you just run out of dentistry, maybe it makes sense to taste test another job. But, I'm glad you're talking about this because as you hear me in my voice, it really bothers me that people, even in my community, do not allow people to authentically share their struggles with something that they're not having struggles with, and shame comes out of that.
Yeah, and you just bring up so many good points because I never understood that either. And I will call people out for, like you said earlier, when you say you don't like your you're unhappy with your boyfriend, the response isn't, oh, well, I really love my boyfriend. You don't say that. And I see people saying that. Yeah. It's not helpful, but I actually just had a comment today from someone who said, well, and she said, I'm curious, so I'm going to take it for that, right? It's our job to control how we interpret people's commentaries, right? But she was like, how can you help people be happy in dentistry when you weren't happy in dentistry? And, part of it is we're going to get questioned like that, right? But what we have to do is build up our confidence. We have to work on our mindset. We have to build ourselves up so that, how I responded? I said to her, that is what makes me better at what I do. Because if I didn't understand the pains that other dentists are going through, I couldn't help them create the solutions.
That's such a good point.
And so instead of feeling ashamed or like an imposter because I couldn't, do it myself, or whatever words you'd want to use, I wouldn't use those words, but because I chose not to do it myself, doesn't mean that because I chose that doesn't mean that I don't have this other talent and passion over here that I can use, and having that struggle makes me better at it. So I think we really need to work on ourselves.
I love that. That was part of that, to bring it full circle at the end, that long thread about people with the coaches. They said, people hire coaches that weren't successful practice owners, and people hire coaches, that don't even know dentistry. And I go, have you literally looked at any other industry or profession? Some of the best people at teaching basketball never played in the NBA. Some of the best people teaching business are not people who are billionaires. So coaching something and consulting something is unrelated to your own personal skill set in that. I mean, it's just, but dentists, for some reason, I think it's that dental school mentality of the kid who got the better grade than you, the kid who got the more patients than you. And I just think we need to dispel this, because it puts people in, and I'm a big sports fan. Actually, the best people who are the best players in sports, like the truly elite ones, turned out to be terrible coaches because they could not understand the pain of the players. Why don't you just dunk it? I just dunk it, right? So I think your point there is really well taken.
I've had that happen to myself, like as the mentee, right? Where I'm having a pain and I try to get help from this mentor who just like doesn't get it, and you don't get the help you need. And so that can make us stronger. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love all that. Well, as we wrap up here, Laura, tell us, how can people reach out to you to learn more about your Lola Bees? I love your Instagram. You're using it more, I can tell, on Instagram. So tell us how they can go to your website and follow you anywhere they can find your awesomeness.
Yeah. And can I add one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Like we talked about that painting and creativity. Other people choose to get a totally opposite job. Like I have a client, Heather, who ended up getting a full-time job with Delta Dental, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
that was, so it could be creative, entrepreneurial, it could be a job, it could be in dentistry. So it's that, and the side gig is oftentimes, so I was saying earlier, it's a great burnout cure for people who want to do some dentistry and make that income and then do something on the side. It can also be a great, safe vehicle for career change.
Yeah, I love that.
That's why I promote that.
But successful dentistry can be dosage dependent. I say it all the time. Someone who does 4 days to go 2 days has some of this. But yeah, tell us how we can reach out to you. Can't wait for you to come to Boost and share your awesomeness. But how can people connect with you now?
I'm so excited as always to be with you guys. I grew up going to summer camp, and your events are like summer camp for dentists. So they're my favorite things.
Awesome.
No one does it like you do. So I also, if you can have a business called Dental Nachos, I can justify the name of my business. My business is called Lola Bees Career Coaching. So people can find me on lolabeescareercoaching.com. My Instagram handle is DR, so Dr. Lola Bees. And I have a Facebook group called Dentist Side Gigs. Or one more, if you can't remember any of that, just do a Google search for 10 reasons your dentist hates you, and you'll find my blog post.
I've read that multiple times. Well, keep helping people feel normal for not feeling normal about dentistry, Laura. I appreciate it. Stick around for 1 minute. Facebook Live people. See you guys later.
Thanks so much, Paul.